Hey, Skip, I do want to talk to you a little bit. We got a lot more coming up on the show, but your No Fear Days. So I did this article on Racer X about No Fear, the Simo brothers, and the incredible growth they had with Life's a Beach, and then, of course, No Fear. And then I did a downfall of No Fear. They went away, right? They had some of the coolest looking gear, the clothing, everything else.
Everything.
So I did a story on Racer X, and a couple weeks ago or a month ago, a guy wrote me and said it was the most amazing thing he's ever written or read, and it was great. And it's an oral history of No Fear. I think you were in it. I don't know. Yeah. So you went there. You hung up the wrenches with Jeremy when he left Honda and went to No Fear to help their motorsports division.
Yep.
What was it like? What was it like working there? It seemed like from my story, it literally was just a rocket ship of revenues until it wasn't.
Because when we first met those guys, the No Fear guys, and we were still racing, and they really started to change how you would look at athletes and how you would do things, right? And that's where, that's something that I do now with our beers. Everyone it's treated as its own franchise, and they were really instrumental about getting that moving forward. And they just, man, and there was a group. It was, I have the twins, Mark and Brian, but you had, Jeff Surwall was a massive part of that success, and there was a lot of great people that had come through those doors. I learned, one of my best friends still does all the artwork. He was one of the artists there, and now he's, we do a lot of artwork stuff together. But now that I'm running a business, I'm reflecting back on how they did things and how they started, Spy and all the different things that went on, and being able to also be there for some of the missteps, and try not to make those same missteps.
It seemed like to me, and it's crazy to think of the revenues. There was $400 million or something in revenue. Like, it was nuts.
Yep.
You look at a company doing that, and you're like, how does this fail? And from talking to them and doing the story and doing the research, they literally just started buying and spending more than what they were coming in, and they were trying to expand, and they expanded. But when you expand, it takes a bunch of money, and then it doesn't work. Like, they had a T-shirt shortage at one point where they were paying way too much for blank T-shirts.
Yeah, because we were printing 1 million T-shirts.
Yeah,
a month it seemed like.
Wow.
And you're doing deals with cotton mills and fabric manufacturers, Fruit of the Loom and those types of companies to where you can basically secure your inventory.
Yeah.
Because that was a big issue of being able to secure the inventory. And there was, egos got in the way sometimes, but man, they saw the world so differently, and they were brilliant. Those guys did some really cool shit.
Were you where were you there until when? 96 to.
Yeah, been 96, and then when Cowie started the 4-stroke program, went back to work with Cowie to start that. So
05? 05? 04?
Oh, something like that. Yeah.
So when you left, they were still doing okay.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. That's when the big expansion started. And I will never forget. They were. We had at one point we had 7 buildings, and.
All in the same park, like in the same industrial park?
All kind of, you could kind of walk between all of them.
Right.
David was there doing some stuff on the bicycling stuff, and Bailey.
Yeah.
And, we got all crazy, and we're doing all these art boards and design lines and all this stuff. And I was in that group with David, and, you have all these, let me back up a little bit. There was a time when they were trying to do some stuff with Nike, and they were talking about maybe Nike buying the brand.
Yeah, that's in the story. Phil Knight makes them an offer.
And that kind of fell apart, and then it was like, all right, we're going to be the next Nike.
Yeah.
We're going to get into golf. We're going to get into everything. So during that process, you had
the expansion. Yeah.
We had all these. We hired all these people. We're doing all this stuff, and there was some great shit that happened, and there was some really bad shit that happened. But we're sitting in a design. You're presenting your line to try to get it moving forward. And you had your inspiration boards, and they had all these elaborate boards, and we had a cheeseburger. Was it a cheeseburger, money and a checkered flag or something like that. And that was the inspiration. It's like, well, if you win the race, you get the most money and the chick. What more inspiration do you need?
Yeah.
And you had all so it was going everywhere. And I think the big failure is at that point there was we can have something for everybody,
yeah.
right? And you realize you can't.
Yeah.
So.
In the story, they hired Brock Glover to run the golf department, and almost immediately they just cut him from underneath and sell at discount everything they made for golf. And he's like, "Wait, what? What?" Like it just seemed like the decisions and the whims every single day changed.
And there was a time where the brand I think what might have hurt. There was a couple things. One was when getting the back of the pickup truck sticker.
Yeah.
When it showed up on what's the cartoon? South Park.
South Park. Yeah.
When it showed up on South Park, that was a bad problem, right? Because they were making fun of it. The Oakley. We were in there with Oakley and some other stuff, and then
now it would be a Monster Claw, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
we fell in that a little bit, and then there was a big push to go urban.
Okay.
We did a lot of stuff with the NBA. We did all this stuff, and we're like, man, we're, looking back on it, going, wow, we're not an urban brand. If it translates over, then great. But to try to go there and be truly relevant, and I mean, we hired groups to go in and do that, but it was, that was probably the biggest thing.
So the biggest thing was saying to Phil Knight, "Hey, screw you, we're not selling, and then watch us, watch this."
Yeah, we'll be the next
Really?
one. No, a little bit.
Yeah.
Like screw you, Phil Knight.
Like they just stay in your lane. Like just stay in your lane of like what you're doing well and selling.
Yeah. So there was and I wasn't privy to all the information then about all the ins and outs, but I mean it came down to there was going to be a deal. I think where Nike was going to buy No Fear and let it really run, and then it fell through, and it was like, okay, I'm going to show you then.
Yeah,
really?
We hired a bunch of people. It was,
my God.
Yeah, we went at that point. There was, we had 3 buildings, and all of a sudden there were 7, and it went crazy. And now I'm just looking at it on my end, on our little scale. Growth is absolutely amazing, right? You got your foot on. You don't want to take your foot off the throttle, but all of a sudden cash management and all that stuff takes place. And there was so much money coming in the door that when things started to fall, all of a sudden this pile of money that's been sitting over in the corner and you just walk by and grab a couple bucks when you needed it, all of a sudden now you realize that you're actually on the 6th floor and it's a hole. It's an old elevator shaft that the money was filled up to it, so you couldn't. But all of a sudden, when the money disappeared, you found these holes in your foundation that just really hurt. And opening up the corporate stores and truly,
the malls.
And truly understanding the cash
like
impact,
what Fox did.
The cash impact that has on a company. Because if you open up one of these stores, there's $1 million worth of inventory that you put in. Right. So, but God, there were so many things that I learned that
Nothing
I used
to do
today.
with how much they were paying Pastrana and Wyndham.
But it's
from what I understand,
relevant.
Sirwall took the gear and was his own.
At one point, the gear spun off.
The gear was spun off. It was Sirwall's company. That caused some problems too. But Sirwall was doing that.
Yeah. So when all that stuff started to come apart, that was Jeff's passion was definitely motocross for sure, and moto and riding dirt bikes. So he pulled that off, and we ended up going and doing that with Jeff, and I bounced a little bit between the two, but there was a point where I was really just on the moto side with Jeff.
So the Life of Beach guys were the two guys you mentioned?
Mark and Brian Simo.
Yeah. And then there was Jeff Beaver, who was involved in Life's a Beach, but didn't stick around for the No Fear part.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
Yeah, it was.
Well, you did your homework.
But you talk about.
You should read the story.
It's a great story.
I will. Your story?
Yeah.
I would love
it's
to. Is
really
it in
good.
the magazine?
It's online.
Do you have it on books on tape yet? You might not be able to read. You have to get
how's the reading,
Do you have the book downstairs?
No, it's online.
Okay.
Do you have a computer?
I have an iPad. Does that count?
Okay, it counts. It
Okay.
counts.
But those guys were brilliant entrepreneurs.
So you came up with that shoe. It had a Dunlop 695 pattern.
That was
on the
actually
sole.
Sirwall's
Oh, was
idea.
it? Okay.
Yeah, that was Sirwall's
idea. Did that
idea.
shoe sell?
Yeah.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That thing went well, and then we got involved with I made the mistake one day. We're sitting in the office, and we're going around, and we're talking about all these problems, and I walk over there, and I'm all, have you thought about this or doing this? And they're like, okay, you're it.
Yeah.
You're on a plane on Tuesday. You're flying to Taiwan. You're going to fix our problem over
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And that's how I really got on the product development side.
Remember that shoe, Berlut? We all had them. Like we wore them as mechanics.
Oh, yeah.
You know, now that you mention it,
Yeah.
it had the tread pattern
Yeah.
of a.
Yeah.
I never had any, but I do remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
was-
fuck. No Fear was putting Super Bowl commercials on. You know, like I mean,
Really?
it was. Oh yeah.
Oh.
Super Bowl?
The
Yeah.
Ty Murray Super Bowl, I still think is a little pissed that it doesn't show up more than often. That was an intense commercial.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
That's
just.
where all the money was going.
But you know, also I read. Speaking of Phil Knight, I read his book a little while ago, and like it was crazy because he was selling, I believe, $40 million in shoes when he first started. Like now the company's growing, and broke.
100%.
And you're like, wait, $40 million because he was always waiting on his next shipment, that he had money out for that shipment that was coming in 6 months from wherever he was getting them made. The banks weren't loaning him any extra money because he was cash poor. He's massive debt everywhere, and he had 40 million sales.
Living it now. No, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough.
And you read the book, and you're
It's-
like, wait, how can
Yep.
Nike was so close to folding early on?
I mean,
Wow.
if you talk to Mr. Roger Penske, you'll talk about his original car dealerships that he had and what it took for him to survive and the things that they were doing. It's you look at these guys and you think that they just were giving it to him with a silver spoon.
Yeah.
And these guys bust their ass to get what they did. I mean,
Yeah.
you listen to Mark and Brian, those guys lived in the warehouse.
Yeah, when they first started, yeah.
Yeah, lived in the warehouse.
They rolled up the shirts and slept on shirts.
Take a lot of chances.
But that's the beauty of it. You talk about committing to be all in.
They another part of the story is they had 3 CR 250s all done up by Mitch. They were racing locally in California, and they needed money, and one of them sold all 3 bikes without the other brothers knowing, and the other guys knowing.
Wow.
Sold all the bikes to make payroll
Yep.
for the next week. Just sold all the
Wow.
bikes. Yeah, so things like that. That was early on.
Early.
Yeah.
That was,
But-
and those guys, those guys got taken to the cleaners on the original partnership that they did
Yeah.
with,
Yeah, Lorenz.
And like I
Lorenz
said,
Hoffner,
now that I look at it, if I knew now, when I was 6, I'd have found my best friend that would have been a lawyer, and I'd have had him as my best friend
Yeah.
because it's
But do you look at those No Fear years as fun and like exciting, and like do you look back on them fondly?
100%.
Okay, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. You think it helps you with Huddle?
And every day.
Awesome.
There's every day I go, what would Sirwall do? How would Brian do this?
Yeah.
What would Mark hit with his baseball bat to make this problem go away? You have all these little things that each of those 3
Brought to the table.
brought to the
Yeah.
table. Brian was always looking for what is the next thing, and he would always hold his phone up and he would have conversations about now what this would have been in early 90s.
Yeah.
And we live it now. He wasn't able to pull it all together
Yeah.
and really get it together. But
Right.
every app that is on your phone, we're going to launch an app next month. This is exactly what he wanted to do 25 years
He
ago.
was ahead of
Right.
his time.
And both that group was brilliant.
It was cool. It was a cool little story I did. I'll send you
Brilliant.
the link, Berlut.
Yeah,
and,
I'd love it.
And I don't know if I know we've touched on your No Fear stuff, but I wanted to get into a little more just based on that reader telling me about this story, and he loved it. And, your time there is.
Yeah, I learned so much. Like I said, I use it every day.
Right.
When did they change from, or when did they decide to change from Life's a Beach to No Fear?
That was early on. Over.
Yeah, 84, 85. They lost. They lost Life's a Beach based on some bad partnership deals.
Yeah.
And then
And contracts with T-shirt suppliers and
Yeah.
all this underlying stuff.
RJ
that-
was kind of
RJ really helped put them on the map. Where it was
Yeah.
I think it was Gainesville, where he wore the
Yeah.
he wore the shorts over his moto pants at
Yep.
one moto, or in practice, or one of the motos.
No, one of the motos.
One of the motos, yeah.
Yeah, he asked Kenny
Yeah.
Clark, if I win the first moto, can I wear these shorts over top of my pants in 84?
he did something like that at the LA Coliseum.
Yeah, that was
too.
later on, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
So that was Life's a Beach also.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he had, I think RJ had his own mail order place and everything else going on.
But
like,
yeah,
that he
so
owned.
I mean, those guys were just, especially Mark and Brian. They were great storytellers. Meaning that they could
sell
they would just
ice cream to an Eskimo or whatever.
they would just they would get you in, and you felt like you were part of that
Awesome.
reason
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Were
they
they
were
SoCal
just
guys?
No, Illinois.
Illinois.
Oh wow.
And you're there, Glover's there, Marty Motes is there,
Marty
David
Motes
Bailey's
is there,
there.
Bailey's
Like
there.
it's a moto Surwall.
Yeah.
It's a moto company.
Yeah, it was and surfing, right? Those were that's the core. That was the core of the original brand.
So Surwall and I talk every now and then. We text and stuff and all that, and he won't do a podcast with me about it. He won't.
Dude, he's a Canadian.
Nah, his
No.
mom's Canadian, I think.
Oh.
Yeah. He's not. Well, he's
Okay.
half Canadian, I guess you'd say. He won't do one. He just like doesn't want to talk about it.
No.
I don't think it ended very well, and I don't think he wants to get into that again. But
Wow.
I'm gonna keep harassing Surwall till the end of time.
Jeff is I owe a lot to Jeff for man. He just taught me so much.
Yeah.
That dude's
God,
he's awesome.
that stuff with McGrath was such badass. It looked so cool.
Well, I think the beauty of it now, I think Jerome Maj was is still a talented individual, and what I see now is I see a lot of the stuff. His stuff was timeless, and you see a lot of the color combination. You see a lot of different things coming through now that he did back in the '90s that were still. It's still relevant. It's not. It wasn't a trend.
Yeah,
it's still relevant.
Yeah.
You could put some of that gear up on the wall right now, and it'd be like, oh, that's just a badass shit. Yeah, it's 25 years old.
No, we do those Re-Raceables podcasts, and we have a category of best looking gear, and we're always like, no fear, man. Like whoever's in No Fear, it's the best looking gear. Even back then, it holds up well. Like you said, like that Wyndham and Pastrana stuff when you were there at Suzuki, that stuff was badass. Those guys look great.
Hey, what about the watch that they gave Wyndham for like a bonus?
Yep.
That Rolex?
Yep. But that was all. I mean, that's what they were the best at, you know. And
taking care of their athletes.
Taking care of their athletes.
Yeah.
They would. They found different ways to fund what they needed to get funded, and not necessarily have to have it be a check from No Fear.